Kelly, thanks for joining today. First question, how did you get into solar?
Ooh, that's a good question because it's not my background, although it's become, and it's sort of like when you live somewhere for a certain amount of time, like at what point do you say you're from there? Mm-hmm. So most of my background is actually in higher education and ed tech. So I spent, call it 15 years working for Harvard and then moved to a company called Guild Education. But I did marketing and sales and a little bit of kind of like operations or general business stuff. But I really focused on, I guess I would call it sort of like a subscription as a service. And so that parlayed nicely into community solar, which is how I got into solar. In March of 2018, I was looking for something new. I was kind of afraid if I stayed in higher ed, like that would be it. People are lifers, and that's not bad, but I wanted something else. I wanted to like see what else was out there. And I was living in Denver at the time. And that's kind of the hotbed or starting point for community solar. So I stumbled into a company called Clean Energy Co., doing some marketing for them, and then was with them for a handful of years. And then a bunch of colleagues of mine went to Pivot Energy, and I just absolutely loved what Pivot was about, like then and now. It's such a great place to work. Colleagues of mine that are here, Quasi and Nate, we were talking earlier just about, you know, when you start at a job, it's funny because you spend so much time with people at work, you don't know what that's going to turn into. You just, you know, you can make whatever you want of it. It can be just work. It can be work plus, you know, and you create some friendships and things like that. But I think Pivot is a place where you really make deep connections with people because there's a shared language, you're working toward the same things, and people really care, not just about the work that we're doing, but about sustainability and solar, and we're B Corp, and we give back to our community. So there's a lot of there are a lot of aspects, I think, of Pivot Energy and solar that I absolutely love, and I don't know, I feel like now I'm probably a lifer in renewables as much as I was like, I don't want to be a lifer anywhere. I know.
We would like you here for life.
Yeah, well, I've been converted.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, those are, it's such a testament, all the things you said about Pivot Energy. Give us a little bit of, I know you've been there since 2018. Give us a little bit of a background, kind of the history of Pivot Energy and how they came about to where they are today.
Yeah, so Pivot Energy actually was called Microgrid Energy. It was founded in St. Louis, I believe in 2009. And the founder at the time, who's still with the company, he's our chief strategist, and super interesting, really cool entrepreneur, and somebody who, like, if you've never talked to Rick Hunter, please seek him out at some point. Like, he's just one of those people, like, he's super dynamic and has like these crazy ideas that he brings to fruition, but he's one of those people that like sells you on an idea in a way that you're like, there's no way we can make that work, and he does. So he, you know, brought the company from St. Louis to Denver, again, kind of hotbed of solar activity. That's where community solar was founded. I think legislation was passed in, call it 2009, 2010, and the first projects were brought online in Colorado around 2013. So we kind of emerged in the space as a develop and flip shop, so as primary developers, a relatively small company at the time, and I think when I joined, I actually joined in October 2020, and it was about 40 people, and now we're close to, you know, 170 plus people.
Wow.
Yeah, so you know, we've now emerged, and we're looking to be kind of a leading independent power producer, and have really become big players in the space in terms of, you know, industry involvement. We're really engaged in the Coalition for Community Solar Access and other industry groups. We have a policy team. We have folks that kind of run from, you know, everything from strategy all the way through the end management of our subscribers. And so we see everything through the life cycle of project development all the way through.
Well, I think scaling your team from 40 to, you said 100, 180?
Probably about it. I think it's 168.
That's a big win.
Yeah.
Are there any other big wins from this year or this past year that you're really proud about for Pivot Energy?
Yeah, I think us emerging as owner operators is a big win. That's been the goal for the past several years.
Yeah.
We were bought a couple of years ago, and really that was the goal for the last couple of years, is to figure out how do we bring our own projects online and what does that look like. So I'd say that's a big win. We've had a lot of successes in some of the core markets as well. And I think we're really thoughtful about how we go into those markets. So, we don't just look at it from a legislative standpoint. Of course, that is like the primary driver behind community solar in particular. But we also look at it, what kind of impact can we have? Can we go into a space and be creative or innovative in how we serve constituents? Does that mean we look at income qualified populations? Does that mean that we really start to kind of play around with some of those legislative bills that allow us to look at the nuance? And we go into it thinking, can we still have a financially or an economically viable project and serve the community in a way that serves Pivot as well? As a B Corp, we want to make sure that we're adhering to our company values and really thinking about kind of the ESG side of things too.
Yeah. I think it's really, really cool what you guys are doing, having, taking in-house so many of those elements of the project life cycle and owning them through the lifetime. Those are a lot of different skill sets, competencies to be able to do that. But at the same time, that's pretty challenging. Is there anything you think that really is key to that, kind of your secret sauce for success, to be able to, originate, develop, construct, and then own these projects for the lifetime of their operation?
Yeah, I wish there were a secret sauce. And I think it's sort of an understatement to say that it takes so many different players and so many different parts to make things happen. We seem like a relatively big company, but I think we still operate like a relatively small company in that, again, we make really strong connections with our teams, and we make sure that people, we call it the solar coaster for a reason. There are ups and downs and ebbs and flows. And, even as recently as less than a month ago, everybody had their eye on California, and all of a sudden California didn't pass their legislation on community solar. So that really shifts how we all of a sudden have been spending the last year plus thinking about what's our strategy going to be, how do we enter that market, and now all of a sudden we're like, okay, well, pun or no pun intended, like we need to pivot now to something else. In terms of secret sauce, I think we've all worked collectively across the organization for a variety of different solar developers or in the renewable energy space. And for as big as it is, it's also really small. I know that even here at this conference, I've bumped into the same person a handful of times, and I'm like, how? There are hundreds of people here. How do I keep seeing the same person? And this is kind of what community solar is like, or working in solar. And so I think we've found the secret sauce is in the people. We bring on people that understand the business, that have done things the wrong way, have done things the right way, and who now look at this as how can we continue to be innovative and creative in the space and continue to drive it forward, not just through policy or legislation or thought leadership, but how can we drive it forward in our business and our roles, and even anybody from top to bottom to top, everybody has a say and can have an opinion on how we do things, and it's part of our kind of ethos and the way that we think about decision making. And that's really powerful because somebody can be at the organization for 2 weeks and go up to the CEO and say, hey, Tom, I had this idea, and Tom is like, come sit down, let's have lunch.
Very accessible.
Yeah, super accessible. And he wants that from people. He wants to hear those ideas. He would never say like, that's a bad idea, or I've heard that before and we tried it. He would say, why do you think that? Tell me more about that, right? He's also constantly seeking to learn and grow. And I think giving that kind of culture, or putting that back into the culture, I guess, and back into our values, is really powerful and speaks to like who we are and what makes us run. Yeah,
absolutely. And for you to scale your team so much from 2018 when you joined all the way down, and still retain that culture and those people, I think is really difficult thing to accomplish, right? Those things, oftentimes scaling teams and getting the right people there to maintain that level of culture, think can conflict with each other, right? You have to sometimes compromise, but
for sure.
For you guys, it sounds like you guys have been able to navigate that and not be the case.
Yeah, and it's, I wouldn't say that it's always been easy, right? I think that alongside innovation comes conflict sometimes, right? And there are a lot of tensions on how do you grow sustainably? What do you push forward when you're growing, and what do you leave behind? And how are those things either in balance or in harmony, and or are they in conflict?
Yeah. We
employ this strategy called kind of even over. And so it's, instead of saying, it's good thing over bad thing, which is a very obvious choice to make. Do you run into a burning building, or do you go get a fire hose? Like, you go get the fire hose. Like, that's the choice, right? That's no brainer. But what if it's, do you get a fire hose and you call the fire department? Like, which one do you choose? Probably poor examples. But, it's good thing A over good thing B. And that is something that I think as we continue to grow and as we want to grow the company alongside the culture that we've built, we really think about, like, okay, we're going to make a decision to work on this other thing, even in lieu of, or even over this other thing, because it's what we need right now. That doesn't mean you leave all the other things behind. That doesn't mean you don't come back to them. It just means that you're making a very intentional choice about what growth looks like. And I think that's, at least in my opinion, one of the best ways to grow sustainably. And we've left very few people behind. We have really low turnover, which is interesting, I think, for me, having worked for a fair number of years, being a bit of a dinosaur.
Yeah.
And, I've worked for companies that have had really high turnover. I've worked through kind of the very beginning of the startup age, and just seeing like a lot of boom and bust. And it's interesting at Pivot, like, most of the people that I started with almost 4 years ago are still there.
Yeah, I think that speaks a lot to what you guys are building, to be able to, for people to stay, be retained. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. It is sunshine. It's not all perfect. I'm thinking about kind of the pain points we're facing in the industry, and specifically for solar, for community solar. Is there any, would you say, do you have like a top, maybe, what are your top 3 pain points you see right now in the industry that maybe are going to kind of prevent a little bit of growth, or things that we need to overcome to hit our targets for development in the segment?
Yeah, that's a really great way of phrasing it. I think that from my perspective, so, and I'm kind of more on the subscriber side in terms of subscriber acquisition, management, that whole life cycle, though I work very closely with the rest of our team across everything. So I see a lot of what is happening in the future markets, or what we're looking forward to. So I would say, some of the pain points, and we just chatted a little bit about the solar coaster. It's not new, right? This is kind of how it's been going for the last however many years. It is. It's a long, bumpy ride. It's a sunny ride, but it's a long, bumpy ride. So, I think because community solar is so driven by legislation, and it's political, right? And of course, we have turnover in politics every several years. So sometimes there are tailwinds, sometimes there are headwinds. And I think right now, one of the things that we're facing is that there's more demand than there is supply. And so unfortunately, we just aren't able to build things fast enough or serve as many people, including large corporate organizations, as we want to. And I think that's going to continue to be a challenge. One of the things we can start to look at there is, what does that mean? Do we look outside of programmatic requirements? Do we look at other on-site, installations? Do we look at virtual PPAs, virtual power plants? Do we look at, rec sales? How do we think about serving our consumers, residents and income qualified folks and commercial subscribers or customers alike? What do we give to them, and how do we package that in a way that is palatable and serves their needs? So, if they're interested in savings and we can only give them community solar, that's great, that probably aligns. But what if they want something more and they want renewable energy credits? Well, if we have a finite number of those, we can only serve so many people. So I think that's probably the biggest hurdle that I see us facing.
Yeah.
I think there are some other small ones that, are all relatively related, and they're facing us right now is a lot of interconnection delays.
Yeah.
So we're seeing that as we're building, where we thought that our, typical pipeline to build a project might be 12 months. That crept up to 12 to 16, 16 to 18. In some cases, it's almost 2 years. And here we are. We thought we were going to have a project online and collecting revenue and bringing that money back in so we can reinvest it into another portfolio or another project. And we're seeing delays largely from the utilities or from some other supply chain issue that we somewhat anticipated, but maybe not to that extent. So I think that's a big area where we'll continue to see some pauses or hiccups in the development life cycle.
Yeah, I do worry about interconnection and kind of those delays affecting the viability of the projects in total, right? Losing subscribers from that, I think it's a huge problem.
Yeah.
Quick question about kind of subscribers to community solar programs. What do you, in the next couple of years, what do you think the subscriber kind of profile looks like the next couple of years? Is it kind of the same target market of folks who, probably don't have a suitable roof? They really want to capitalize on savings, sign up, and have the ability to sign up for a program. Do you think it fits a different profile moving forward? Do you think it kind of stays more the same?
I think the profile for a community solar subscriber probably stays the same or relatively similar. I don't see the cost of rooftop solar or a home installation coming down so significantly that it's more accessible to people.
Yeah.
And if anything, rents are going up, cost of living is going up, and with inflation, there are a lot more renters on the scene than probably homeowners. And even with some of those homeowners, right, they're either cash strapped, or the average, I think, residential life cycle is, 5 to 7 years in a place. And so people are moving around. Community solar is a really great option, and it's not just for renters, and it's not just for people that can't put it on their roof. It's for people that don't want to put up the upfront investment. It's kind of simply savings. And I know we always talk about it in that way, and when we try to educate, people are like, that's too good to be true. You can't just save money, but that is how it works.
Yeah.
And so, for you to save money, it might be less savings than you would get with a rooftop system or a system mounted in the ground in your yard.
Yeah.
But you don't have to put that investment in. You can leave it. You can take it with you. So I think from a residential or, a standard subscriber perspective, we'll probably see that that population become more interested as people start to better understand what community solar is. And I think that's probably one of the other hurdles is, community solar is not a household name, and it's not even nationwide. People don't know what that is. When people hear solar or they get something in the mail, so my parents live in a deregulated market, and my mom saves all the mail that she gets and gives it to me as like fodder to be like, here, what your competitors are doing. And I'm like, that's actually a different product because it all looks the same to them, right? So are they buying energy? Are they buying supply? Are they investing in solar? Like, what are they getting out of it? And I think that as an industry, we just need to get better about creating kind of an education program or component so that people really understand what this is. And tell all your friends, let's talk about this more. Let's spread it word of mouth. Let's make it more organic and make sure that people really understand, like, it is as easy as, signing up and giving us your information for the utility to be able to get access to clean, renewable energy.
Yeah, simple steps, but difficult. There's a lot that goes into customer education, like you just explained. Do you see, when it comes to like customer education about community solar programs, do you see there being any new challenges in the next few years to navigating those conversations, or do you see it being something that you can really build on the momentum that you guys have built right now, and maybe it becoming more of a easier sell in the future?
I think there are two sides to kind of customer acquisition or management or education, or that kind of whole life cycle with our subscribers is, I think there is definitely an education component where we can make it easier for people to understand and sign up. And then I think there are some challenges that we will continue to face, particularly with some of the income qualified populations that we're serving. If we think about certain markets, so if you look at Hawaii, for example, there are simply people that cannot participate in community solar because they don't actually have access to the grid, right? So rooftop solar is really high percentage-wise in Hawaii because people have to have that direct access. And so, as we think about, it's not just about education, but can people actually access it physically, right, location-wise? Can they access it? Is there a language barrier? Is there a barrier to payment? So a lot of markets right now have a dual payment system. So it's you get your utility bill, and then you get a bill for your community solar. And by and large, you're still saving money each month, but it's confusing because you're getting credits on your utility bill, and then you're getting an invoice from the community solar company, and then you're paying that. And just because of the way that runs, you might be 30 to 60 days behind. And so now it looks like in 1 month you're paying more, when in reality you're paying less. But that's hard to show somebody if you're not sitting at their kitchen table with them with their 3 or 4 bills laid out over 4 months to say, here's where you're saving money and how you're saving it.
People typically don't like getting more bills,
Yeah, no.
It can be tough.
No, nobody wants to pay more things.
Yeah.
And we try to make it as easy as possible. So, you can set up auto pay, you can set up Venmo even, you can set up something where it's like a payment system that works for you, but it's still confusing. And, how do we say at the end of the day, here are your savings and it will be worth it, we promise, until they start getting those savings. And so, that could be 3, 6, 9 months. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, this makes sense to me now. But by that point, they're like, well, you told me I was going to get savings. Where am I seeing the savings?
Yeah.
So
what motivates you? Like when you wake up in the morning and what is there anything in particular that really drives you to really get up and put this big effort every single day into being a mom, the work that you're doing at Pivot? Is there anything like any key motivations that really ignite you every day?
Yeah, I'm tired first and foremost. I should probably say that. So even though I'm motivated, I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
I'm an older mom. I had a baby at 42. She's awesome and she's really funny and silly and goofy, and her name is Betty, and she is kind of a little version of me, which is awesome and fun, but also a total nightmare, because when I'm annoyed about something and I'm like, oh, where did she get that energy? I'm like, that's me. But it's also what really drives me. I texted a friend last night something that maybe sounds morbid, and I hope it does not come across this way, because genuinely we're all walking this earth on borrowed time, right? It is our goal and our mission as humans, as good community members, as family, friends, parents, whatever role you play, to leave this earth a better place than you came into it.
Yeah.
And how do we do that? And how do we do that for our children? In my case, I want Betty to be able to say, my mom did these really cool things and she made this a better place, and I can live here longer because of the things my mom did. And I look at her and I look at how innocently she looks at things, and you forget to carry that with you as an adult. You forget to carry that innocence of a child's eye looking at something so obvious and blatant, and just I try to carry that through. A lot of my team members jokingly call me positivity pony, and it's funny because I don't always think about myself as positive. I think sometimes I'm pretty heavy on the pessimism scale. But I don't even think it's just because I became a mom. I think it's working in this industry, working with the people I work with, the friends I've made, and knowing what I want the future to hold for me, for my family, for Betty, for my friends' kids. I try to look at something, it's like, yes, that glass is half full, but how can I make that glass bigger and fill that halfway and even more, right? So I'm constantly looking at ways to fill my cup. Doesn't mean that I'm always doing a great job at it. Doesn't mean that every day I'm positivity pony. There are some days where I'm completely defeated and want to just go on bed strike and not get out of bed. But I think we're doing really cool things, and I love the people that I work with. I think I've worked with the CEO of our company for several years across different companies, and he's super smart, and he's young and ambitious, and the perspective he brings to things really just helps continue to push me and others, and I love seeing that. We have quarterly retreats. So we bring, almost our entire team. We'll have a group of 150 to 160 people in the mountains. And, we're sitting across the table from each other. And I'm like, oh, you're from wherever. I don't get to talk to you. Let's have a conversation. Yeah. And so you get to know people on a level that I think is inspiring. You get to know really funny, silly things about them. We do when people join, you have to tell an embarrassing story about yourself. It's not just like a fun fact, it's an embarrassing one. Mm-hmm. Some of those go really deep, but you know a lot about everybody very quickly, and you learn about somebody so much in the first 10 minutes of their time at Pivot.
For sure.
And I don't know, I love that. I think those are some of the things that keep me going, keep me motivated.
So just one last question for you before you leave. If you had a magic wand, you could wave it to fix one thing in the solar energy industry, what would it be?
Yeah, if I could, it's probably more than one thing, but if I could roll it all up, if I could be like Judy Garland in Wizard of Oz and just click my heels together, I would really want to focus on how we make solar more accessible. How do we think about bringing it to more people? Instead of looking at this market by market or individual by individual, we're serving a really small population of people so far. Yeah. I think most markets penetration is probably about 5 to 6% of utility customers. And so what if we thought about this on a broader scale? Do we think about this nationwide? Do we think about how we educate across the nation? What if this becomes a much bigger issue that we just continue to raise and all talk about? One of my, I would call him probably the most poignant speakers, and I absolutely love him. And also, I'm from Massachusetts, and so he has a special place in my heart. But JFK said, a rising tide lifts all boats. And so even though we think about ourselves in the industry and our, competitors or other players, it's a small industry. So we think about it, I affectionately call it co-opetition. Mm-hmm. So I'm here, at this event, and I can be walking around and speaking to somebody else who's developing in the same market. And so in theory, we're competing with one another. Yeah. But if we think about how to raise the tide to lift all of those boats in the water, I think at the end of the day, we're doing our job. And that's something that I would really change is how do we get on the same page and band together to really increase access and to just develop more renewable energy? Mm-hmm. 5 to 6% of the population is small. Imagine if we could serve 50%, 60%. What does that look like? Yeah. And how do we offset the carbon that we're producing?
It's a small piece of a big pie, right?
Yeah.